A very good noon and Jai Hind, dear students. Dear students, as in my Zoom class, I have observed that many of you are not at all aware about the chapters which we have sent through videos to you. I have seen that the proper revision was not done, the proper homework was not done from your end. I just request you all to please start reading your chapters, take your studies seriously and buck up now. So just because I observed that some of you were not at all aware about the chapter, so I decided that in this video let me present you a short summary of the chapter Indigo again. I hope this summary is going to assist all of you in learning about the chapter in a summarized version. Indigo is about how Mahatma Gandhi struggled for the underprivileged peasants of Champaran. They were the sharecroppers with the British planters. The peasants used to live a wretched life and were under an agreement to grow indigo. As Bihar has the landlord system back then, it wasn't their condition. Thus, Gandhi decided to fight against injustice. He waged a war which lasted for a year to tackle the discrimination and got justice for the peasants. After that, it helped the peasants become courageous and aware of their fundamental rights. Moreover, Gandhiji did not just work to tackle the political or economical issues, but also he took up the social issues. He worked in Champaran to provide them with education, health, hygiene, and taught them self-confidence. This story is set in 1916, where Gandhi steps up to help a bunch of poor peasants from Champaran. The story gives an account of how he struggled to bring them justice and equality. Thus, it begins with most of the arable land of Champaran that divides into a large estate. The owners of the estate are Englishmen and the workers are Indian tenants. We learn that the chief commercial crop on this land is indigo. Moreover, we also see that the landlords compel all the tenants to plant 15% of their indigo and submit the whole harvest in the form of rent. The tenants are under a long-term agreement to do so. However, Germany starts developing synthetic indigo. Thus, the Britishers do not require the indigo crop anymore. In order to release the poor peasants from their agreement of 15%, they start demanding compensation. While some of the uneducated peasants agreed on this, the other did not agree. Other denied. Other said, why should we pay compensation to you? You should pay us the compensation. Thus, we notice that one of the sharecroppers, Rajkumar Shukla, arranges for a meeting with Gandhiji. Then what happened? He meets him for the same issues and insists Gandhiji to visit the place to end the long-standing injustice. Gandhi agrees and boards a train to Patna in Bihar. After that, Rajkumar Shukla helps Gandhiji visit the house of Rajendra Prasad, a lawyer. As Gandhiji dressed simply, the servants thought of him to be a poor peasant. Thus, Gandhiji planned before trying to get the peasants any justice. It is because the British government are punishing anyone who is keeping national leaders or protesters. Thus, when Gandhiji arrived in the place, the news of his arrival and mission spread across the town like wildfire. This resulted in a lot of lawyers and peasant groups pouring in large numbers in his support. Consequently, the lawyers did accept the charges are quite high and too unreasonable for a poor peasant. However, Gandhi was criticizing them for collecting huge fees from the sharecroppers. He was emphasizing on counseling as this will provide the peasants with confidence to fight their fear. Thus, he manages to get justice after a year-long fight for the peasants. He has also arranged for the education, health, and hygiene for the families of the poor peasants. Finally, he teaches them a lesson of self-sufficiency and self-confidence. To sum up, we learn how Gandhiji did not merely help in freeing India, but was always working for the betterment of his countrymen from the very start. Now let's have a look on the introduction. Who's the writer? Louis Fisher. Louis Fisher describes Gandhiji's struggle for the poor peasants of Champaran, who were the sharecroppers with the British planters. They led a miserable life and were forced to grow what? Indigo, according to an agreement. So they suffered a great injustice due to the landlord system in Bihar. And Gandhi waged a war for about a year against their atrocities and brought justice to the poor peasants. So let us quickly have a look on the main characters in this chapter. Mahatma Gandhi, Indian national leader; Rajendra Prasad, a lawyer and later the President of India. I was surprised when I heard that you do not know who was Rajendra Prasad. Some of you didn't answer me in my Zoom class. J.B. Kriplani, a professor in Art College, Muzaffarpur, Bihar. Then Professor Malkani, he was a teacher in a government school in the chapter. Sir Edward Gate, he was the lieutenant governor at that point of time. Rajkumar Shukla, a sharecropper from Champaran, Bihar. Charles Freer Andrews, a follower of Gandhi. Kasturba, that is wife of Mahatma Gandhi. Devdas, youngest son of Gandhi. So these were the characters which were highlighted in the chapter. Now see Indigo places in the story. What are the Indigo places in the story? The very first place was Motihari, capital of Champaran. Muzaffarpur, another place which was highlighted in the chapter, a town in Bihar. And then Champaran, of course, a district in Bihar. Tirhut division or commissionary is an administrative geographical unit of Bihar in India, and Muzaffarpur is the headquarters of the division. The division comprises 6 districts: Muzaffarpur, West Champaran, East Champaran, Vaishali, Sitamarhi and Shior. Indigo. Let us quickly have a look on the word meanings. Indigo. Indigo means a tropical plant of the pea family, which was formerly widely cultivated as a source of dark blue dye. Convention, meeting, proceedings, working and events of the meeting. Resolute, number of times we have discussed in context of Rajkumar Shukla, that is determined. Tenacity, stickiness, firmness, en route on the way. Arable, fertile. Chided, rebuked or scolded. Estates, large properties. Reconvened, started again. Grievances, complaints. Deadlock, which the condition which having no more progress. Unanimously, with one voice, united. Alleviate means to remove. Pacifist, one who is against war. And self-reliance means self-independence. So let us quickly move to the theme which Indigo deals with. So the writer describes Gandhiji's struggle for poor peasants, and further he told that they suffered a great injustice due to the landlord system in Bihar. This heroic struggle ended with the victory of the civil disobedience, and the English landlords had to return the money they had extorted. There is a word used, extorted, from the sharecroppers. Gandhiji taught the lesson of self-reliance and fearlessness. The story highlights that the struggle for the noble cause never goes unrewarded. Okay, that whenever you struggle for a good cause, for a noble cause, not for your own selfishness, it never gets unrewarded. Every time you may get reward, maybe a little delay will be there, but it will be fruitful. Now let us have a quick look on the Indigo main points. The very first point is that Rajkumar Shukla, a poor sharecropper, wished to meet Gandhi to complain about the injustice of the landlord system in Champaran, and then Shukla followed Gandhiji everywhere and begged him to fix a date to come to his district. Gandhi was much impressed and fixed a schedule. Gandhi and Shukla reached Patna to meet Dr. Rajendra Prasad, but he was out of town at that moment. Then they decided to go to Muzaffarpur first to get detailed information about Champaran sharecroppers. Gandhiji sent telegram to J.B. Kriplani and stayed in Professor Malkani's home, a government servant. Indians were afraid to show sympathy to the supporters of Home Rule at that time. The news of Gandhiji's arrival spread, and sharecroppers gathered in large numbers to meet their champion. Gandhi chided the Muzaffarpur lawyers for taking a high fee from poor sharecroppers. Champaran district was divided into estate owned by English people. Indians were only tenant farmers. Next, landlords compelled tenants to plant 15% of their land with indigo and surrender their entire harvest as rent. Then what happened, dear students? Later on, in the meantime, Germany had developed synthetic indigo, and British landlords freed the Indian farmers from the 15% arrangement but asked them to pay compensation. Many signed, those who were illiterate, they signed, but some resisted too and engaged lawyers, and landlords hired thugs. Gandhiji reached Champaran, visited the secretary of the British Landlord Association to get the facts, but denied as he was an outsider. Gandhi went to the British official commissioner then, who asked him to leave Tirhut division immediately. Gandhiji disobeyed. He went to Motihari, the capital of Champaran, where a vast multitude, means crowd, greeted him and continued his investigations. He visited maltreated villagers' place also, and there he stopped by the police superintendent, but he disobeyed the order. Motihari was all black with peasants. Spontaneous demonstrations were taking places. Gandhiji released without bail, and civil disobedience triumphant. Gandhiji agreed to a 25% refund by the landowners. It symbolized the surrender of their prestige. Gandhiji worked hard towards social economic reforms, and Gandhiji taught a lesson of self-reliance. So this was the gist of the chapter Indigo. So further we have discussed some of the important questions, like what were the conditions of the sharecropper of Champaran at that time when Gandhiji visited that place. So how was the condition? The peasants of Champaran were the tenants of British landlords, and under long-term sharecropping arrangement, they were growing indigo on 15% of their holding and surrendering the harvest as rent to the British landlord. But when indigo's price fell due to the synthetic indigo developed in Germany, the landlords obtained an agreement from the peasants to pay them compensation, which some of the peasants resisted and fought their case in court. Other important questions like how do you know that Rajkumar Shukla was being resolute, and what made the British realize that the Indian could challenge their might hitherto unquestioned. So the spontaneous demonstrations around the courthouse by the peasants of Motihari on knowing that Gandhiji was in trouble was the beginning of their liberation from fear of the British, which made the British realize that now the Indians can challenge their might. Okay, so I mean, it is very interesting chapter related to our history. I don't know why you all are not reading this chapter, why you're not showing interest in this. It's one of the very interesting chapter you had. You will get to know a lot about your history. How was Gandhi able to influence the lawyer? Can you give instances? So yes, Gandhi's sincerity of purpose, convincing argumentation, and a logical approach deeply influenced the lawyers. Chiding them for overcharging the peasants, he encouraged them to quote arrest for the poor peasants, cause if he himself got imprisoned. So there could be another question like, what was the attitude of the average Indian in smaller localities towards advocates of home rule? So in the smaller localities, Indians were afraid to show sympathy with advocates of home rules, and thus it was surprising for Gandhi that he received support from Professor J.B. Malkani of the Arts College of Muzaffarpur. He met him at the station with a large group of students and also housed him for a couple of days. So he was surprised that this person is giving me shelter, knowingly that it can lead him to some sort of dangers. Why was the sharecropping arrangement irksome? क्यों था ये इतना मतलब problematic है? क्यों था ये? Why was it? What was its fate और इसका future क्या था? So most of the cultivating land of Champaran district was divided into large estates, as I already told you, and the Indian tenants, peasants, they were working on it, for which they paid rent. Indigo was the chief commercial crop. The English planters compelled all peasants to grow indigo in 3/20th or 15% of their land holdings. The entire indigo harvest was to be surrendered as rent to the British landowners. The landlords came to know that Germany had developed synthetic indigo. Thereupon they obtained agreement from the sharecroppers to pay them the compensation. This sharecropping arrangement was irksome to the peasants. Some signed it willingly, and those who opposed engaged lawyers. The landowners hired thugs who forcefully collected the compensation amount. It was at this point Gandhiji reached Champaran, and Gandhiji's civil disobedience and peasant spontaneous demonstration compelled the lieutenant governor to appoint a commission of inquiry into the sharecropper situation. The official inquiry concluded that the landlords had to refund the part of the money to the peasants. After a few years, they abandoned their estates. The indigo sharecropping disappeared completely. How did Gandhiji win the Battle of Champaran? Another question. So after his arrival at Motihari, Gandhiji used a house as the headquarters so that he can have a complete investigation for the sharecroppers. And at that time there came a report about maltreating a peasant. The next morning when Gandhiji went to see him, he was overtaken by the police superintendent's messenger with an order to come back. When he reached home, Gandhiji was asked to quit Champaran at once. Gandhiji signed the order but wrote to disobey the order. The next day Gandhi appeared in the court. That night Gandhiji telegraphed Rajendra Prasad to come with influential friends. When the peasants knew that Gandhiji was in trouble with the authorities, the court ground of Motihari became black with peasants. The officials felt powerless and they had to seek his help. The trial was postponed, but Gandhiji protested the delay. In between, he was left at liberty. Now Gandhiji asked the prominent lawyers what they would do in case he was sent to jail, and to this they told that they would follow Gandhiji and give the court arrest. Gandhiji exclaimed, "The battle of Champaran is won." So when he has seen that there is a unity now in between my advocates and my people, then he said that the Champaran battle is won. So ultimately this chapter is teaching us how you can bring the unity, how you can bring, how can you go with the how can a leader which all are the qualities which a leader has to possess. And further he says that if you are strong willed, you are determined, Rajkumar Shukla shows you the strong, resolute, the strong determination will. Gandhiji shows you about the leadership skills, about bringing unity in the people, about gathering the facts and materials first, just not to just you heard something and you have reacted. Gandhiji showed you no, you should not be dealing in this way. The dealing should be in a very proper, in an organized manner. You should gather the facts first. You should go into the detail, depth. What he did, he has taken 10,000 testimonies from the people. He has met to see the people's condition. He actually experienced all these things. He met the poor people. He went over there. He resided with them, and then he gathered the facts and information from there, and then he acted. He was not an impulsive man. Just he heard and he reacted to that situation. No. So it shows that he was having a lot of patience. It took for him a year to fight for Champaran, for that satyagraha, the sharecropping system. So that means it also shows that how much patience he was having. He was having a lot of great patience to deal this situation for a year. Because sometimes it happens that you start with very pomp and show, but in between you lose your patience and you drop the thing. But Gandhiji continued, and after winning that satyagraha battle also, he didn't stop. He worked for the social reformity. He worked for the social welfare of that particular place. He saw that people are dirty. They do not know anything about hygiene. So he just called his people from the ashram, and he worked towards that also. So just see his vision. He was taking care of the very basic things till that movement, and letting down the Britishers in front of him. What kind of a vision this ordinary man was having. The man who was a simple looking man, Gandhiji, what kind of vision he would be having at that point of time. Just see, imagine. Think of Rajkumar Shukla. See how determined, being so poor, a peasant. He visited so many places just to have Gandhiji in his Champaran to resolve that problem. So, every character in this chapter gives you some sort of a moral quality, some sort of a moral teaching, okay? And first and the most important is that you should work for your society. That is the very, very important one, that be united, work for your society where you are living. Now see, there is another value-based question which can be framed, that exploitation is a universal phenomenon. The poor indigo farmers were exploited by the British landlords, to which Gandhiji objected. Even after our independence, we find the exploitation of unorganized labor. What values do we learn from Gandhi's campaign to counter the present day problems of exploitation? So exploitation is a universal phenomenon. Yes, it is a universal phenomenon. It was there in the past, it is there in the present, and it will be there in the future. The form of exploitation will change, the shape will change, but exploitation is there. Okay. So now see, it exists since the origin of the society. How? The mighty, they rules the poor. And what shall I say, it makes a stratum of the society, you can say, stratum of society, slaves, and the other one rule them. Since the British rule, this phenomenon is on. They exploited Indians in each and every possible way. Most noticeable was the exploitation of the poor indigo farmers. They had been getting nothing for their hard work. Then Gandhiji taught them to speak against it using the power of truth, education, peace, and non-violence. The condition is even the same in today's scenario. Laborers are still being exploited in unorganized sectors. They work for long hours but do not get paid according to labor laws. They need to remain united, come ahead, and fight for their rights. Legal paths should be followed to get what they deserve. No one should be ready to work in unhygienic and improper working conditions. So togetherness, strength and self-determination will definitely bring fruitful results to the laborers in every field. So that's what I'm saying, that this chapter is having a lot of things to tell you, many things to tell you. So just read this chapter. It's an important chapter from the point of view of the exam also, and as well as I want, being an Indian, you should know the history, what was our history. So please read this chapter. Tomorrow, after this video, I am going to send the question answers also in the form of PDF itself. So complete your copy work. Very soon we will ask you to give your copy, send your copy for correction. So complete your copy work. I'll see you in my next video, and please don't take your studies so lightly. Pay some attention, dear students, and start studying. Thank you and have a nice day.